Welcome to the Monday, July 21st edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast here, sponsored by Circus Sports. I'm Joe Bartel. Find me on Twitter at JB Fantasy Sports. Alongside me, every Monday moving forward here, Jake Letarski. You can follow me at Roto Jake. Today, we're going to go into a bit of I would call them draft day dilemmas, positional battles. That's the way I at least approached it, Jake, as well, too. And I had joked on Twitter that I'm going to be turning the tables on you because I've had this question asked me, it feels like for 2 months now straight with Nick Whalen. I have fully committed to what my ideas these people in this range, Jake. The only unfortunate part is that I'm sure that will change as training camp progresses and whatever else. I will stick to my takes to high water at this point, but I want to hear what Jake's thoughts are on similar players in that value. So we're going to get to that in just a second. We did have some breaking news both today and yesterday, and I think actually one that will impact things slightly was the Seahawks officially releasing Noah Fant, saving, I think, close to $10 million in cap space yesterday. That was a surprise to me. I was on with the fantasy sports advice guys on Friday, and actually we were asked, do you want either Noah Fant or Arroyo, the rookie who they took in the second round? And I had said, I typically rookie second round picks, especially tight end, take time to develop. I would rather have Noah Fant. Well, the answer has been cleared for us here with Noah Fant released. However, there is Barner, the tight end who they had last year, and actually was something that we talked about on the waiver wire a decent amount towards the end of last season. I think might be still more relevant than Arroyo. When you saw the news of Noah Fant being released, Jake, what were your thoughts from the Seahawks perspective? Oh, Jake, can you hear me? Just want to make sure we're.
No, I'm good to go. I had our own YouTube link up.
I'll rephrase the question to you again here, Jake. So
yes, it's preseason for me a little bit here too right now, I'll admit. But no, I was ready to talk about Noah Fant and Elijah Arroyo. I actually took Elijah Arroyo. If you look at my X feed, I managed to take him in the 18th round of Scott Fishbowl. And of course, we know Scott Fishbowl is 2.5 points per tight end reception here. So a little bit. I'm not sure Arroyo is going in standard 12-team redrafts, but he might be someone that changes on here as we get close to the season here. I'm not too concerned about AJ Barner. It's funny that the Fant move happened to be at the same time Arroyo signed his rookie deal. So they're ready to go, like within days of each other too.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, I think that I think that he's making an impression, and I think that he can be a solid player in this league. Obviously, rookie tight ends, Brock Bowers kind of broke the mold on that last year. Rookie tight ends are never effective, right? Until last year we have him going. I mean, and not even a ton of volume in college at Miami. I mean, he had caught in his first 3 seasons, he caught 11 total balls and then caught 35 for 590 and 7 touchdowns here. So a very high TD rate, at 6'5", 254, someone that can maybe jump up and get some jump balls here from Sam Darnold in this new offense. We'll see how it goes. But a tight end one, possibly tight end one. I'm not too worried about AJ Barner, but a tight end one with that touchdown upside could certainly be fantasy relevant and maybe sneak into the redraft radar for 12 teams as we get closer to draft season, especially with a good preseason game or two.
Let's give a bit of a backdrop for the folks who are kind of diving into fantasy football around this time for the first time this season. Again, we're talking like late July. If you were not aware of Elijah Arroyo from a draft perspective, I don't necessarily blame you. It was a 2 tight end race, and then really by the last week of NFL draft season, it was a 3 tight end race. Of course, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, and then Mason Taylor, who was the very first tight end selected in the second round to the Jets, who I like a lot. It was then after that, God, watch out for this guy. Like the highlight tape for Elijah Arroyo is insane. And the athleticism Arroyo has is insane. It was literally always coupled with, he's crazy athletic, but he gets injured. And he was dealing with the knee injury, of course, at the draft. Seahawks still take him back in the second round. And I think clearly it was a commitment to, we're going to move on from Noah Fant, and this guy more or less replicates that. I really want to preface it by saying, you can like Elijah Arroyo as much as you like him from a prospect perspective. I do think AJ Barner, for the first portion of the season, is going to be somebody on the show that we talk about every Monday moving forward, Jake, but also until people recognize what the tight end position looks like with this new Seahawks offense, with new Sam Darnold quarterback, that might make more of a difference too. Historically, Bowers aside, Sam Laporta aside, historically, rookie tight ends, especially ones who are as undefined or I guess need more refining is probably a better term, like you mentioned with Arroyo, don't make an impact right away. Like, how many times have we talked about uber athletic tight ends who have potential? Kyle Pitts. And even Kyle Pitts had a really, really good rookie season. Like, I just think Arroyo is going to be one of that. is going to be far more enticing to the rookie heavy drafter, and they might just ignore what AJ Barner is doing like 5 weeks
Yeah, I
ago.
mean, you can't forget that he's only played 25 college games his entire career, and yeah, of course, the rookie thing that you're talking about here. So he could very well be a guy that maybe you, like you said, he comes on later in the season as he gets, like that refinement that you're talking about. He could be someone that maybe you agree to not take in your 12-team drafts, but at least watch list him and think of him as a waiver wire pickup. Definitely on the radar in Dynasty, obviously, just due to the nature here and the new opportunities. So yeah, so actual fantasy, some useful fantasy football developments coming in late July.
Yeah, the other bit of news was that Will Levis had surgery on a shoulder injury dating back to early last season, which he tried to play through and, of course, didn't end up doing well. Titans go number 1 overall, take Cam Ward. I wasn't thinking that this was a major bit of news, but I have a bunch of friends that were like, oh, well, that's Cam Ward season guaranteed. And I'm like, well, yeah. Did you watch Will Levis play it all last season? Of course, there's going to be Cam Ward. But I think there was an importance that the Titans had pretense that, well, will you let the rookie win this job, that he now is going to be effectively guaranteed it with Will Levis out for the season. I don't think impact things. I liked Cam Ward a lot as a quarterback prospect, maybe not more than a few other quarterbacks in recent years. And I know that the demeanor or everything we've heard of Cam Ward, this shouldn't impact things. He's an ultra competitor anyhow. But just so you know now, if you were thinking it's Will Levis or Cam Ward, it will absolutely not be Will Levis.
Yeah, exactly. That solidifies Cam Ward's ADP kind of towards the back half, as you would expect. This Titans team is rebuilding. There's a lot going on here. The timing of the surgery is weird for me, for Will Levis to get it now as opposed to in January if it was an issue all season long. But I think perhaps either he's realizing or the organization is realizing that there is not going to be a competition. There was not going to be a competition.
True.
So might as well just go ahead and go under the knife and then not have Cam Ward be distracted as we move on here. But this is going to have reverberating effects here. It's going to affect the fantasy value of Pollard, Spears, Ridley, Lockett. There's a lot of guys here. And I think, well, in a positive way here, he has the keys to the car. And we're not moving backwards at this point. So it's good to at least have that defined instead of have it be one of those super late, 2-quarterback league dilemmas here and you having to make a call based on the week 1 starter.
I don't know how much this impacts the Will Levis situation, but I think about, as a Packer fan, I've heard this now with Christian Watson, that there was a potential if he doesn't play all of this year, the Packers can actually retain an extra year onto his contract and that he would be a free agent this year, Christian Watson. Then theoretically they would have it for 1 more season. I don't know how that's supposed to play out. My thought was always, if you're out for the year, that still counts as a year of eligibility played from a contract perspective. Maybe that's a factor in this. I don't know. Nor do I think the Titans really want that to be either. Whereas the Packers, I see reason to having Christian Watson for 1 more year on a cheap deal, theoretically post knee injury. I think the Titans want to move on from this Will Levis experience. And I don't know. Again, it doesn't matter. I thought Cam Ward was going to be the guy literally right away anyhow. So this more or less just affirms it.
Yep. Yeah, right on. And then after that, just a lot of quick hitters over the weekend. People are starting to go on pup lists. Guys like Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, Christian Watson, who you mentioned. Not a lot of surprises there. Chris Godwin's not cleared for team activities, dealing with that leg ankle injury. Kind of ahead to RotoWire for the latest news situation. You'll get all those roster moves picked out here. We'll just give you the highlights and the big fantasy ones too. And I mentioned Arroyo signing his rookie deal. Funny enough, Quishon Judkins has not signed his rookie deal, and I don't think anyone's in a hurry necessarily.
Well, and that's also tied to what the Texans did earlier this offseason, giving Jaden Higgins a fully guaranteed second round contract. And that has now affected literally every pick. I think there was only 2 second round selections overall signed because of this. Now we're starting to see it trickle in a little bit more as the language is being refined for that. But the Texans broke the mold and inadvertently, I think, affected every other team, which was kind of a fun talking point for the last 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, exactly. And Jerome Ford ended up going 4 rounds ahead of ADP in the fishbowl. Granted, that's RB heavy because you see my draft board, how heavy I went on running backs with my interpretation of the rules there. But yeah, suddenly that gives Jerome Ford a little bit of a bump, as we predicted last week.
Yeah, everyone was hearing Dylan Sampson, or saying Dylan Sampson, and we had at least said, no, let's talk about Jerome Ford for a second. I'm glad we did, because that has been, I think, the consensus from all the sharp drafts that I've done. I watched Jim Coventry do a live NFFC draft earlier last week too. Same sort of thing. Jerome Ford's ADP was pushed up to the max as well. So let's get into those tier battles. Again, I had mentioned this a little bit earlier. The concept of here's 4 or 5 guys in the same spot, in the same position, is something that I think you guys, the listeners, watchers as well too, on the RotoWire YouTube channel, you're going to have to run into this problem for. And it's unlike here's 3 or 4 guys in the same ADP range. Literally this season, the way it's been going, and I don't think this ADP will change now at late July, it's here's all these guys in the same position. Which one do you like more than the other at this range? I have been asked this question a million times. I've more or less defined what my answer is for each one of these, but I want to get Jake's thoughts on it too, because it is going to be an interesting question you guys have to deal with as well. Reminder, you can have this same sort of thing. You can go through the same sort of problem or exercise, it's probably a better word, on the RotoWire football app as well too, just by using our mock draft tool. That part is free. You can use the mock draft assistant to help you get set for all different drafts as well too.
And the best part of that is you can see what the rest of your draft looks like after a decision, and then rewind. Exactly.
This is exactly it. I was almost wondering if you had tried this out yourself, Jake, because I have. I've went through this exercise of, okay, if I take Garrett Wilson over Terry McLaurin, what does that lead me later on? How do I feel confident? And I have come to the conclusion, using the RW football app and the mock draft tool itself, to kind of have some of these opinions that we have been able to develop. But I want to get your thoughts here before
I just want to say, to preview next week a little bit, we're going to go through some mock drafts, both there's standard mock drafts and some more advanced settings with keepers and whatnot next week. So I know we did that initial draft plan building tool a couple episodes ago. Mm-hmm. Check it out on the channel, especially if you're subscribed to the site and haven't had a chance to look yet. Give you a good rundown there. Next week we'll be focusing on the mock draft simulator and the power of that tool, what we can all do.
Yeah, and again, we're sponsored by Circa Sports. We love those guys. Circa Million and Circa Survivor are back with a massive $21 million in guaranteed prizes across both contests. The Circa Million is pretty simple. You pick 5 games against the spread each week, 18 weeks of action with 126 ways to win. $1 million for the winner and $6 million guaranteed in total prizes. And then with Circa Survivor, you have 1 pick each week. No point spread, just who you think is going to make it and win that week. Lasting the longest ends getting you the whole prize pool, or more or less that, at least 15 million in guaranteed prizes across the Circa Survivor. Again, 1 week, just make a pick. Hopefully that team wins, doesn't bangle you like they did for me in week 1 against the Patriots, and you keep moving on. You enter Nevada, play from anywhere, 21 million guaranteed for both competitions. Visit circasports.com for more details. All right, Jake, kicking things off in the tier battle. And again, it's not just here's the running backs and receivers in this tier, but the way that the ADP has shaped up over the past, I would say, last month and a half post NFL draft, it really is, here are X amount of people in this position. If you are going to take one, here are your options. And I have found that these all get clumped together, at least for the receivers, at the back end of the second round, early third round. It's a bit different on the RW mock draft tool. I've seen them kind of get spaced out a little bit more sporadically because we factor in a bit of luck, or what I would call alcohol consumed, factor into the mock draft portion of things too. But here are your receivers.
For sure.
Variance, yes. I mean, that's the play.
Which you're going to find in most of your leagues that aren't, high stakes, very competitive NFFC ADP like we're using. But yes. But anyway, there's a group of guys and
So
it's a real dilemma you'll have to face.
I'm going to read off the names. I'll interject with some of my opinions on stuff. But overall, you guys, the listeners, watchers, whatever else, I think if you're drafting in the early first round, coming back in the 2-3 turn, you will be asking yourself, do I want to draft one of these guys? Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin. On the NFFC, they all go within about 5 picks of one another, again, back into the second round, early third round. Maybe some slipped to the end of the third round. But again, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, JSN, Terry McLaurin, T. Higgins. Jake, of that 5, I'm not saying rank 1 through 5, but who is your first choice among that group?
Yeah, so this one, obviously a little bit of a cop out here because it's the highest in ADP, but I think Garrett Wilson is your guy in this pick. Now, this is the toughest dilemma of all of them we're going to talk about because it's so early in the draft, so early in where ADP is. You almost can't go wrong with any of them just because of where this position is in the draft. Every single one of these players either comes with a degree of safety or a high degree of upside. And the reason I'm picking Wilson is he essentially comes with both. He started his career with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, played all 17 games in each, and had that production despite never having a quarterback. Now, you could argue he doesn't have a quarterback again this year with Fields. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Fields, of course, has trouble reading the defense, as did all of his predecessors who threw to Garrett Wilson. So we'll throw that in there. But at the very least, they were college teammates for a little bit, so there should, in theory, be some chemistry there. And remember that Justin Fields, whether he can read a defense or not, still supported a career year for DJ Moore. So you can support an alpha if you have to do that here. Garrett Wilson, and so that's the floor, the production that he has, even with bad quarterback play. But the ceiling is that he has always had a ton of volume, massive volume, but one of the poorest per target efficiency marks in the entire league for all of his years, just because, again, you're catching it. Hospital balls, you're catching balls behind you, you're catching balls that aren't even catchable in the first place. So basically, I see that as a positive, as there's area to improve upon what he's already been able to establish. Obviously, passes every bit of eye test for me. And yeah, so I'm going to go with Wilson at this pick. I have a pretty clear number 2 in this pick, in this race too, but I want to send it back to you first to see if we're on the same page or not.
Yeah, I don't think I'll do this for every one of these, but I want to be clear. The answer up until probably 2 or 3 weeks ago for me has been Jackson Smith-Njigba for the case that you made. Like, if the idea is I want a receiver who, again, taking back into the second round, early third round, that has the opportunity to exceed past that current ADP, but at minimum gives me my floor, the obvious answer in my mind has been JSN. Now, you have to kind of look at with a glass half full with the Seahawks offense. Maybe Sam Darnold will not turn back into a pumpkin. Maybe we got close to what Sam Darnold will now be here. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. And you could also say, well, Cooper Kupp cuts the value. I don't think Cooper Kupp plays more than 5 or 6 games with the Seahawks. I think that one is going to be completely irrelevant by October. And in that scenario, even if Sam Darnold is not a good quarterback, and I think that's kind of clear in this point, you could sustain a fantasy relevant guy to that level, again, late second round, early third round in today's NFL. And I think JS said if he's playing the slot, playing the outside, doesn't matter. That has been my answer. Yeah. I agree with you now, though, Jake. Having thought more about what Justin Fields has done with DJ Moore in particular, I'm really glad that you brought that one up because that one matters a lot. And that Ohio State connection, which I think does matter as well, too. They've both went on record talking about that was one of the reasons Fields signed with the Jets to play with Garrett Wilson. I'm completely on board. Garrett Wilson is the correct pick of that tier in my group or in my mind. And he is also the contrarian selection. That is, of these people, either the last or second last of these selections. I think it's really interesting that you and I both came to the same conclusion, and he's the cheapest of that group.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a safety pick in here if you're one of those people that doesn't want to take big swings, and I think the safety pick is T. Higgins, and that's why I put it number 2, just because the Bengals have to repeat the high volume passing that Joe Burrow basically needed. They spent all their money on, they're paying Burrow now, and they've got the
Chase and Higgins. Oh yeah.
Yeah. They need so much help on defense and just didn't really get it. So how does that get any better? Burrow led the league in yards and attempts, I believe, last year. And of course, obviously Chase is there as an alpha, but Higgins had a career best PPR scoring average, almost 19 a game fantasy points. And that was in a year in which Chase played all 17 games. I remember we were worried about that contract stuff at the beginning, obviously got sold out. So Higgins is my safety pick and I put him 2. I threw Lockett, JSN at number 3.
Fine. The same
for a lot of the same reasons that you have. No Lockett, no DK Metcalf this year. Yes, they added washed up Cooper Kupp. Sam Darnold supported 2 solid receivers. We also have to keep in mind that Sam Darnold had a much better offensive line and just scheme in the first place in Minnesota here. But JSN is definitely a high upside pick with room to grow. I'm actually out on Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. He's too inconsistent, and this is way too high of a price to pay for him. He would have to dip significantly. He never had more than 6 targets in a single game. Trey McBride's getting all that offense. I looked at his game log. He had 3 different streaks in which he had 55 or less receiving yards. So his final line is just bolstered by a couple of huge games and then fantasy projections models, assuming there's going to be some positive growth there, given he's a second-year player and high-profile draft pick. I don't see it with him at this price. I'm fine with Terry McLaurin. He's the other guy in this group. Yes, you have to bank on Jane Daniels having a good season. Yes, Debo's in the mix now. I assume there's going to be some touchdown regression coming with McLaurin, but I do have shares. I took him at the 4th round in the Fishbowl League. He's real close with JSN. I put him 4. So I'm ranking those guys. Don't need to go in depth with the rest of them, but just I had some notes I wanted to get off my chest on
the McLaurin one real quick. There's going to be some people concerned about the contract extension that to this point he has not showed up to training camp or has said he won't. Yeah. I don't really think that matters a lot. The Commanders have such goodwill finally going for them for the first time.
Yeah.
It like
he's been tied to trade rumors with the Patriots. It makes me wonder a little bit what's going on here. Of course, that all came out a little bit after I made that pick, but
sure.
But yeah, he could fall
Even
down this
still,
list.
I don't think that makes a difference, and I would be shocked if the Commanders choose to move past McLaurin because they
Yeah,
have nobody else behind them, and right now
exactly. You
they have the
trade your
7th best
alpha
odds for
for a
the
developing quarterback that needs to make a step. That's just not going to happen. I think that's just rumor fodder. So I still don't mind. Like if you're coming up the 3rd round and he's still there, he's a perfectly fine pick in my eyes.
I want to give a stat correction because it gives a good lead into one final person I want to talk about. You had said Marvin Harrison had had more than 6 targets. I think you're saying he averages 7 targets per game. At least that's what I was looking at.
Oh, maybe it was 6 receptions. 6 receptions.
Okay, reception. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
and that's
I misspoke. Okay, fair enough.
no, that's fine. I think it's really important because you would think for a guy that's being drafted late 2nd, early 3rd round, he would be a JSN who's going to get 15 targets.
He'd be getting double-digit targets. This is not the case
what
here.
the Cardinals use Marvin Harrison for. So unless, like you had said, we're just like oogling him because he got muscular in a picture from a couple weeks ago, and all second-year receivers develop blah blah.
Yeah, which he needs to do because
Cardinals
he's not a yards
using
after
that.
catch guy.
No, he's a deep yard specialist, and they don't have anybody else to replace that role. They kept Drew Petzing. They still have Trey McBride. The offense is not running through Marvin Harrison. I will buy the dynasty dip midway through next season because I'd imagine a better coordinator will use Marvin Harrison, who I think is a good receiver prospect, better than just stretch the field. But the way the Cardinals are doing things right now, there's zero reason to be drafting him the way he is. Like there just won't be enough volume to sustain him as a late 2nd, early 3rd round ADP. That's my 2 cents of Marvin Harrison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're in agreement there. In agreement that he's last of this group for us, and Garrett Wilson rightfully is going to develop into first here. So I know a lot of people. Wilson has left some bad taste in folks' mouths, but I will stay on that train this year, and he's someone I'm trying to get more shares of as we move along.
I'm with you on that one too. We're going to take a word for our sponsors, Blue Wire. We'll come right back. Okay, we're back again talking about ADP battles and specifically different positional spots that I think you're going to have to run into in every draft. And while the 2nd and 3rd round, if you don't have an early 1st round pick, you're probably not dealing with these players. At this point onward in the podcast, there will be decisions that you make. If you want a receiver of X group, you will think about these players. If you want a running back from X group, you will think about these players too. So the next one that I want to present you, Drake, you could be Drake for one day. I'm fine with that, Jake. But the one that I want to present you is, I think, possibly the most lucrative tier battle if you get it correct. And this is typically the end of the 4th, early 5th round, and often it's receivers. Now, I could see people taking them early 4th round, mid 4th round, or even fall a bit further, depending on the board breaks out. But it's a group of Courtland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, and Xavier Worthy. And now Xavier Worthy might move past that with this Rashee Rice news from this past week. I have yet to see a range where he's not drafted at least early 4th round. He has not won too many 3rd round selections in best ball or NFFCs that I've seen. So again, this tier of receivers, Courtland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Devonta Smith, Xavier Worthy. Who do you want?
Yeah, even if Rashee Rice missed 8 games, I still put Worthy last in this tier, oddly enough. Remember, Hollywood Brown's back too. Obviously, Kelsey gets his targets. They want to run the ball, all of that. So I'm not super interested in Worthy at this. He reminds me kind of Jaden Reed light, almost like gadget guy that you chuck some deep balls to, but isn't going to be a possession receiver like Rashee Rice will when he's back, or even Hollywood Brown here. I'm also a little bit out on Devonta Smith. He was very frustrating last year, very inconsistent, and it's not his fault. The Eagles are just so good that they run the ball 58% of the time, the highest rate in the league, and are never behind late in games, that Devonta doesn't have the upside. So for me, it's between Sutton and DK Metcalf. I ended up going DK Metcalf. I mean, he's going to be the true alpha in Pittsburgh after this Pickens trade here. While Rodgers is 41 years old, DK Metcalf, who seemingly has been in the league for forever, is only 27 years old. So in theory, his athletic prime, scheme and defense maybe means slight dip in overall targets, but he's definitely my pick just because of who else they have to throw the ball to. I think their second best target is probably Jonnu Smith. I think he's going to work well with Aaron Rodgers and this whole system in Pittsburgh, and really be the guy. He's the only yards after the catch guy. You don't necessarily have to scheme him open like some of the other guys. He's going to give you a chance to move the chains every single time. Courtland Sutton's interesting. There's not like the Steelers, there's not really a true possession receiver on the Broncos roster. I mean, we list Marvin Mims at number 2 in the depth chart. It's a similar setup in where Evan Ingram, the tight end, might be the second best for targets there. But Sutton was struggled early last year. We're building on a good second half, and Bo Nix continuing to improve or at least maintain the improvements that he made throughout the course of the year last year. So Sutton's a fine selection, but I think the answer has to be a proven asset in DK Metcalf. And yes, if he could do it with Geno Smith, I think he could do it with Aaron Rodgers too.
I think there is zero answer other than DK Metcalf in this tier. I have yet to take Cortland Sutton. That might be one of those guys that I just don't end up selecting, but I understand there is very little ceiling in my mind with that selection. Devonta Smith, there theoretically is a ceiling if AJ Brown were to get injured. And I recognize the possibility of Xavier Worthy. I think we're just viewing Xavier Worthy differently as a player than Tyreek Hill or whatever you want to make past comparisons for. So in my mind, DK Metcalf is the only correct call. And I think the target projections that we have set and just the industry as a whole are entirely off for Metcalf. Rodgers over the past 4 seasons has attempted at minimum 530 passes, not including the ACL tear 2 snaps in. If Metcalf averages only a 23% target share, we're talking about 120 targets in that offense. Every time Metcalf has exceeded that threshold, again, over 120 targets in a season, he's been a top 20 fantasy receiver in full point PPR formats with 2 top 8 finishes. So over 120 targets, if Metcalf at least reaches that, he's been a top 8 fantasy finisher. I feel like top 20 receiver is the floor for Metcalf, the way things are. And if he just hits the worst case scenarios in this offense, he's going to do that. And he's being drafted as wide receiver 24. If Metcalf is only receiving a 23% target share for Arthur Smith, everyone is fired midway through the season, Tomlin included. Like that, 100%. I don't see how this happens otherwise. Like Metcalf should be drafted, I think, in that tier of Garrett Wilson that we were just talking about earlier, and you can give him a round later at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, the thing that I saw is just like Metcalf is going to be 27 here, and people, I first thought he's one of those guys, like even like not Amari Cooper, but like you think they're older than what they are because they feel like they've been around forever. There's no fall off coming for DK Metcalf. If anything, he's entering his prime, and he has been pretty durable. I mean, last year missing 2 games was the first time he's missed multiple regular games in his career. So, the durability factor and everything else that he has going on for him, he is the clear choice. We're in agreement there.
There's head case scenarios, and I think bad head case scenarios for Metcalf. Like he does dumb stuff on the field often. Maybe he gets ejected from a game or 2. You could see how Metcalf and Rodgers don't necessarily get along. Although I kind of think Rodgers at this point of his career has to just be like, he has to just get over himself on that.
He's going to feed him Devontae's level because there aren't other options.
But Calvin Austin can't do that. You can't have Jonnu Smith just get 300. I don't know a scenario unless everything just self-combusts and then he could just bet the under on the Steelers win total and you'll make out just as well. That Metcalf is not going to make good on that fantasy value. And I think he's the clear answer from that group. So unfortunately, Jake, I've been pounding this table for 2 months. I have seen the ADP rise steadily over that period. I would not be shocked at all if come mid-August, we are not talking about Metcalf in the same range and he'll have elevated above that. But for now, if you're doing drafts, preparing for it, if you're using the RW mock draft tool on the app as well, Metcalf is the clear, obvious answer in my mind as a wide receiver 2 or 3 on your team. I want to move over to the next tier, and it's one more group that I think is really troubling, but from a different perspective, and that's your kind of running back 2 group. I would say if you're fading the running backs, or if you only take one, like a hero running back approach, you are often going to run into this as a late 4th round, early 5th round selection. That's Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, and Omarion Hampton. At least even before last week, Omarion Hampton was pretty conventionally in this. I would imagine it's unfaithful for this conversation to say Omarion Hampton will be drafted in there. He's rose about a round or a half round since Najee Harris has not reported a training camp with that superficial eye injury.
Yeah, so it's almost
Hampton might not count.
Yeah, where you can't get value on him anymore because it's all built into his price tag. Because even before Najee Harris was playing with fireworks, he was still bad, and Hampton was gaining momentum. Right. So Hampton's my pick now out of this tier. But I just, like you said, I don't think we're going to be able to get him at this tier for now. He has a good offense, but not a crazy mobile quarterback. And they like to run the ball. They're top 10 in run play percentage. The Chargers are. So there's definitely a lot going here. Man, reviewing the rest of this tier was really tough. I mean, I guess my pick has to be Kenneth Walker to some degree because I look back at the drafts I've done, and when faced with this same dilemma, which I have on multiple times, basically every time I've taken a receiver in the 1st round, or it's been a super flex that I've won quarterback, I've faced this dilemma myself. So I've thought about it because, you want a foundational running back. And the reason I took Kenneth Walker in my most recent draft was with Fishbowl is because there is an overall prize, right? And I'm trying to find the biggest ceiling of all of these players, and it's Kenneth Walker for me. The problem is he's injury prone, and he's injury prone enough that Zach Charbonnet kind of cracked the door open and got involved.
And already injured. I think he's already entering training camp
Yes.
injured as well too.
But again, with the overall prize at stake, I have to think of which one of these guys, from a pure skill talent standpoint, is the best. And I went Walker. And if he plays 14 games, I think that'll be a very huge foundational piece, especially in a fishbowl format that's awarding points for carries and awarding points for first downs. He could be that bell cow here, where Walker's the ceiling pick out of this. Maybe you could even say Hampton is the ceiling pick now if he's moving tiers. And the floor pick for me was actually Chuba Hubbard. If you want to go, it's a high floor. You got to start her on a terrible team, and at least he catches passes, and there's no real competition behind him. Rico Dowdle was signed. I'm not really worried about that. I've also had a lot of Mixon in early drafts. He had a pretty similar personnel setup, but the problem is they switched offensive coordinators. They're going to go a lot more between the tackles, I think, with Nick Caley coming in from the Rams, and of course they signed Nick Chubb. But I don't take that as them worried about Mixon. I take that as them just wanting to run the ball between the tackles a lot more, and just a shift in how they're scheming. So it's not necessarily a Mixon deterrent for me. I ended up with a couple round 4 Mixon shares in some of the early staff drafts we did in June for content down there at Jordan's here. Kamara's fine too. I expect a big workload. I think it's a contract year, but there's always injury risk there as well. And we're dealing with possibly the worst QB play out of anyone in this group here. What's going to happen with the Saints? So in the end, again, Hampton probably should be the pick now, but to date, Walker's been my pick just because I'm going for the ceiling play, especially in those overall prize formats.
I want to do a bit more with these running backs. And again, for a reminder for folks, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, and at least early on, Amari Hampton has been in this range. I think he'll rise above it. And we're talking about within a 5 or 6 pick difference, all these running backs will often go off the board or at least close to it. I'm going to remove Amari Hampton from it because I think it's a bad faith example to have him in there, especially with the news that's happened recently. The Kenneth Walker part of things is really interesting. I put together an article on the site. I've called it kind of like a Mythbusters series, but the idea of let's tackle some stigmas I think are in the fantasy community. And one of them I had been hearing about and reading about a lot was the running back 4 through 6 range is dead. And I think you could even expand it to running back in the 7th round. Don't draft those guys. It was about a 50% hit rate in either selection or either side of things. And I have this article up on the site right now. You can see it on my Twitter as well, JB Fantasy Sports, or 15% off pod to a Roto subscription. You can go ahead and read that site on as well too. Kenneth Walker was one of those obvious ones in my mind to avoid. If there was one scenario that you're like, okay, the data compiled over the past 5 years of running backs drafted in this range, what have been misses, and it's not just guessing Cam Akers blows out his knee catastrophically. It's typically been injured running backs or older running backs on the decline. Like Mike Davis, for some reason, I felt back in 2021 was drafted in this range. Well, Mike Davis was never good. It was like a hindsight is 2020 thing. Joe Mixon really qualifies in this in my mind, but ironically enough, some of the running backs that popped off were year 4 guys. There was 2 or 3 examples where year 4 guys ended up popping off. Kenneth Walker, year 4 guy in an offense that's going to have a lot of rushing opportunities. So whereas I thought initially Walker being an easy fade for me because he's injured often, Charbonnet is a quality backup. For whatever the reason, if you're trusting this year 4 pop-off sort of scenario for these ADP tier, 2 other examples would support your idea that Kenneth Walker is like a high-octane scenario sort of player.
Yeah, right on. And shout out to Scott in the questions asking who outside the top 10 running back could finish inside the top 10. I think that's very much your answer right there in Kenneth Walker. If you told me Kenneth Walker played 16 games this year, I would take him, and I knew that bank, I'd take him in the 3rd round of every draft.
I think he was higher than that. If you're just, I think he's
guaranteed that. It's the injury risk price in the peg. And
right.
If you joined us late, Scott, I think both of us are in on Omari and Hampton climbing up the ranking. I mean, if he was drafted in the same position as Ashton Genty, would we not be talking about him as a top 5 ADP person?
If Najee Harris wasn't there, much like Ashton Genty has nobody else behind him, then we're talking about Omari and Hampton. But because Najee Harris, or what we think is the figment of Najee Harris, is a factor, that complicates things for me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how to price in a superficial eye injury. I have no idea what that means. The idea of somebody playing with a firework getting their eye injured, I can picture that. It's pretty nasty.
I will say Michael Bisping, former UFC great, now commentator, fought about his last 4 or so fights with a glass eye that he hid from the athletic commission and almost won a title. So it is certainly possible. They make you cover one eye, and he guessed right on the numbers. So
That's
I mean,
crazy.
yeah, that's
Okay.
crazy. So shout out to the man there. But it's not a complete inhibitor, even in a sport where you're getting hit in the head.
Scott also asked, are you guys worried about the O-line in Seattle? The Seahawks have made a number of changes this past offseason to improve that, much in the same way the Texans did. Texans were one of the league worst offense lines last year. Changed parts around. No guarantee that it'll actually be good. I think the Seahawks are probably the nicest way to quantify it that way, too. I have far more reservations, Scott, about what a Sam Darnold offense does as opposed to here's Sam Darnold and the offensive line. So if I'm saying what's one factor that concerns me more, it's Sam Darnold. Whereas I knew what I was getting from Geno Smith, and I knew what that system wanted Geno Smith to be. There's too many question marks with Sam Darnold overall that's my reservation as opposed to the offensive line for the Seahawks.
And also a back like Kenneth Walker, he's good for his his elusiveness. He can break tackles, change direction, burst. Tough player to tackle, right? Even if he's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, he's still going to make something happen as long as the health holds up.
I'll push back on the Joe Mixon one just a bit because you had mentioned that you have a few shares of him. I was drafting him too. That's the only reason I'm saying this.
Mm-hmm.
I think in hindsight, looking at the data that I compiled on that article again on RotoWire, you can see it as one of the frontline articles. Are the 4th through 6th round ADP is that gone? Is it a dead zone? Aaron Jones was the quintessential example of here's an older running back that has been injury prone, has a backup behind him. Your guy is Nick Chubb, Jake. Like you are a Joe Burrow supporter to the death. You're Clayton Kershaw supporter far longer as well too. Nick Chubb has been your guy. I think it matters.
He had been for so many years. But to see him blow out his knee the way he did once again, I don't know if the human body is designed to recover from that many ACL injuries that are that violent here. Nick Chubb is no longer a threat, and he's off my fantasy radar.
Interesting. Okay.
I respect him for what he's done, the titles he's helped me win. Even as a bad as on a bad team like Cleveland over the years, he's produced and had huge games. But for me, I don't see him as a threat to Joe Mixon.
I like Woody Marks a lot as a 4th round running back that the Texans drafted out of USC. He's a pass catching running back though that I think either complements Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon. It allows Mixon and Chubb to do what they should do in this offense, which you had said is run between the tackles. Woody Marks is more of a pass catcher in that group.
I just took Woody Marks in round 20 of the Fishbowl, but right. He's not going to be on the radar in redraft leagues. He's someone you maybe watch list just to see how that could easily be an inactive player for the first couple of weeks.
If he is picked up even in the sharpest of leagues, I'd be kind of surprised. Like you have to have at least 18 rounds where you're considering Woody Marks, and I think rightfully so after the Nick Chubb signing. So I have at least one more battle, and we'll at least go with the quarterback position first here. But word for our sponsors, Fantrax. Is there something you wish your league had, or a feature that you're missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedule for playoffs. I really need to have that in my league. Deeper team settings as well too. We'll look no further because we have it covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, and of course, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. And Fantrax even offers college fantasy football leagues as well too. Create or join a fantasy commissioner league, invite your friends, dominate your draft of the season. Fantrax is the top dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Fantrax is running a special promotion that I don't want you guys to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/RotoWire today to enter for your chance to win a signed Jamar Chase jersey. Simply create a new league, bring over your existing league, and you'll have more chances to win that way. Go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. All right. I think we'll have time for at least one more of these. And I wanted to pose to you, talk a lot about our receivers and running backs. There isn't so much a tier battle at tight end, or at least not one I think is consequential. But if you choose to wait at quarterback, you absolutely are going to be deciding between all these guys. Now, this is a larger group more than other ones, but it's starting at quarterback 10, Jared Goff. Then it's Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy. Almost all are selected within a round of one another, and it typically starts around round 9, maybe extending into round 11. But Jared Goff at quarterback 10, Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy. I think there is an argument to be made that at least 4 of these ones will easily be quarterback 1s throughout the entire season. But I think there is an argument still to be made. One can be exceeding all of that, even if there's a lot of risk. So how did you sort of break out this tier of quarterback range, Jake?
Well, I'll be straightforward. I look at this and I was like, what I'd do is I'd skip this tier entirely and try and shoot for Jordan Love or Caleb or CJ Stroud, both guys who I'm plenty fine comfortable heading into the season with my QB1 if I have to, and then maybe with my second quarterback pick later on, take a real flyer on like a Cam Ward or JJ McCarthy, hope to strike gold with some upside players. But so yeah, I'd skip this tier and go with Love and Stroud are both just like way
Lawrence
under.
too. Trevor Lawrence is in that range. I'll be taking the same.
Yeah,
As well.
Lawrence is interesting here. I mean, if you had to really put me up against it and pick a tier here, I guess I go Jared Goff just because because he's been proving it and he has an array of weapons. I mean, Caleb Williams is still relatively unproven, learning a new system, though I'm somewhat confident he takes a step forward with Ben Johnson. Dak Prescott's kind of on a sinking ship that is the Cowboys, and who knows, that actually might help him. Fields is only really here because of rushing in this tier, right? I know I've expressed confidence in him being able to support,
Well,
Garrett
let's stop here because. So first with the Dak Prescott one, I'm not sure if you've seen this yet. I'm sure we'll analyze this more. Dak Prescott is currently either 6th or 7th best odds to win MVP right now. So the idea of, okay, well, sinking ship in Dallas, that is not how the general public seems to view things. Like this is going to be the Cowboys passing attack. They added George Pickens. And I keep saying, well, the offensive line is worse. They had some guys retire. I have no idea what the backfield's going to look like. And there is just in the same way that the Niners had pessimism last year, like just things were going bad. The contract baloney, Jerry Jones stuff. Here's the stadium having sun in their eyes. There's not many positive stories you're hearing about Dallas right now. So that goes against the public perception of Dallas, but I agree with you on Dak Prescott.
Well, yeah, America's team, right? The publics also think everything's shiny. But yeah, no, Dak's fine. 5 years as QB1 in my dynasty league has not, yielded the results I'd hoped. There's a lot of inconsistency there. He's got good receiving weapons. I will give him that. CeeDee Lamb, and then they add George Pickens. So I always thought it was an exceptional athlete and an exceptional receiver that was a little underutilized in Pittsburgh here. Also played, years with heavy target competition there too. But yeah, out of this whole group, I guess I'm picking Goff because it's a safety thing, right? You pretty much know you're getting 20 points a game here. Yeah, they'll probably run the ball a little more, but he'll get points from little dump offs to Gibbs.
Do you know he's getting 20 points with no Ben Johnson? And now you have Frank Ragnow, who retired as well, too. They're all pro center as well for the offense. I had Jared Goff, who thankfully helped avoid a dastardly payment in the stake league last year. He carried my team for the second half of the season. But that was because the defense had like 55 guys injured. They had to pass a bunch of times. When it was everyone healthy, here's David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and everything else, Jared Goff was not a top 12 fantasy quarterback, and you have no Ben Johnson and no Frank Ragnow.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, I do value scheme and system changes here, and having to learn something new at this stage is a factor. It's more about personnel to me. And I guess if it was only about personnel, then I could put Dak Prescott in there as a real close next one to him. But again, all of these guys seem to have their flaws, and that's why I'm looking to the next tier. And then I might take quarterbacks back to back in round 12 and 13 if I have to, after I've taken plenty of stabs at filling out my starting lineup here. Yeah, they'd have to fall considerably beyond their ADP. I haven't really messed with any of these. Even in Fishbowl, where I took Joe Burrow in the first round right at the turn, which is questionable for some, I ended up, get my guy, right? I ended up taking Stroud, much later on, and then just taking stabs the rest of the way out. I took Shadir Sanders like super late. Who the heck knows what we're getting here. But yeah, I'm skipping this mid tier here. For me, they're all kind of the same. Can
I pose to you one scenario, and we're going to actually do this exact exercise next week when we're going through the RW football mock draft tool on the app, because I think this is literally, I think visually this matters. So I'm going to try to lay it out to you. You like that Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence tier. You said C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, and same mix. What if I told you can get a top 5 fantasy quarterback upside in Fields and then still drafted Jordan Love or Trevor Lawrence, and the only expense is like what? Brandon Ayuk or Rashad Bateman or Ramondre Stevenson? To me, there's literally zero downside of drafting Justin Fields for exactly the reason that you mentioned, for your love for Jordan Love and everyone else. Like I truly believe that Justin Fields is not a good quarterback in the NFL. I also don't think it matters with the way that Fields wants to play. And more importantly, I don't think the Jets are going to bench him for Tyrod Taylor. Like, in what scenario, Jake, in your mind, is Tyrod Taylor seeing consequential snaps? Because if the answer is zero, well, yeah, right. Besides injury, if the answer is zero, then Fields is almost by default going to be a top 6 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah. No, I mean that's fair. And Yeah, I mean, Jets still have a pretty decent defense here, so he's not playing comeback like some of these other guys might be. And yeah, we'll see. I guess I got to give that one a little bit more thought here. See how much your league penalizes interceptions and go from there.
Or fumbles too. Yeah.
But or that. So but yeah, I guess you could go with both and do that strategy that you like. Even if the players that you mentioned aren't super attractive, I do like having more bullets at the running back position here, especially whatever between running backs and receivers, whatever I faded early to at the expense of the other, or if I ended up going to a tight end that early in a draft, or if I took someone like Jalen Hurts in round 3 or 4, it wouldn't matter. But yeah, I'm just trying to load up more bullets on the skill positions, or maybe grab my tight end if I missed it, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes from there. But I'd rather, instead of taking one of these guys and then Love or Stroud later, I'll take Love or Stroud and then take one of those super big swings late in the draft.
I like the JJ McCarthy call, for example. Like I don't mind that concept. He really is typically available as like a quarterback 22, 20 in that range. Like that's a really good value spot, especially in best ball I found for my quarterback 2 or 3. But I mean, Jake, I literally bleed green and gold. I'm not going to try to like pound the table for Justin Fields, Bears quarterback. I'm just saying, if you like the Jordan Love, CJ Stroud tier of quarterbacks, then it makes complete sense in my mind to take Fields with the assumption that you get these upside scenarios. I've tried to twist your arm on it. We're gonna have to see.
Yeah,
I want to literally put this.
That too.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool part is that we're going to put this to the test next week. I want people to visually see what this roster looks like in the event that you do choose to take Fields. And any one of these guys in this tier, again, we mentioned 4 or 5 different ones. There's probably maybe 1 or 2 more from a positional battle of things. You are going to have to answer the question. Maybe not that Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, JSN, Terry McLaurin group like that. That might be outside of a certain range, but everybody else, if you want X position, if you want a certain range of these guys, you have to go on answering what you want out of that group, because when you're on the clock, it's going to be significantly different. So we gave you our thoughts and opinions on a few of these guys at the quarterback position. We'll go over that a bit more in next week's podcast, but I think this is pretty good. Jake, how did you feel coming away from this guy? I gave you a lot of people. You had to do a lot of knowledge or research, at least in like a very short time span.
If we did this topic for a show every week, we'd be through the whole player pool and would dominate drafts. Not that I don't already do that, but yeah, it would be crazy here. So this is a very fun exercise. Got me to think about some real dilemmas I've had in like early June drafts that I hadn't done this level of research at the time, and maybe ended up with a little too much mixing, or ended up
not enough Justin Fields the answer.
But no, I like him. I'll stand by that. But no, this was a great exercise, Joe. I could see us doing this again as ADP changes as we get into August. But yeah, next week we'll be dialing in on the mock draft simulator tool and give you some good tips on how to do that, because once that clock turns to August, we're gonna it's time to just sit on your phone and do mock drafts every chance you get. And we got a great tool for you.
Yeah, we got a ton of really, I think, fun Monday shows coming up again next week, kind of using that mock draft tool, but we'll have our yearly auction strategy explanation as we get prepared for the RotoWire Stake League. You and I do the NFFC auction draft as well, too. I've got that already planned for us. I'll be at the Fantasy Expo in a couple of weeks. I think we'll probably do a show circled around that. So, I mean, at least on Mondays moving forward, you're going to have Prime, Jake, and Joe as we gear up towards the waiver wire portion of fantasy season, as, of course, Week 1 kicks off. But until then, of course, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back in next week. This podcast sponsored by Circus Sports and all these other ones too. So appreciate everyone kind of tuning in and following along with us.